I've actually been down to our home, and what we saw, we just cannot believe it.
The expression we're seeing on both the faces is not genuine sadness.
Most people agree that a parent losing a child is the worst human experience imaginable. A parent losing 6 children in a brutal fire should be unimaginably painful. And yet, when criminologists looked at Mick Philpott after the nation-famous house fire, they noticed the same thing. This wasn't genuine crying, and they did not have to analyze too thoroughly. There were already reports of Mick flirting with mortuary staff when he went in to identify the charred remains of his children. On May 11th, 2012, a fire tore through a council house on Victory Road in Derby, England. The blaze would claim the lives of 6 innocent children and shock a nation. But as the investigation unfolded, it became clear that this was no ordinary house fire. Instead, it was the culmination of a twisted plot orchestrated by the very people who should have protected those children the most: their parents. This is the story of Mick Philpott, his wife, married, and the tragic deaths of their children. Just before sunrise on May 11th, 2012, the Philpotts' neighbors came rushing to the house, wondering what on earth had happened and despairing over the children sleeping inside. The emergency services received a frantic 999 call from 18 Victory Road at 3:46 a.m. The call was not made by the neighbors, but by the children's mother, who seemed, like most mothers, preoccupied with her kids.
How many kids are in the house, Mrs. Philpott? Where are they?
6 children were trapped inside the house, while Mareed was standing and watching it all go ablaze. Despite the valiant efforts of neighbors and emergency responders, the fire claimed the lives of 5 children that night: Jade, 10, John, 9, Jack, 8, Jesse, 6, and Jaden, 5. Dwayne, the eldest at 13, was rescued but succumbed to his injuries in the hospital 2 days later. The community was devastated. Most people knew who the children belonged to: Mick Philpott, a man whose face they'd seen in tabloid papers one too many times. He was known for his unconventional lifestyle, living with his wife and mistress and oodles of children from multiple relationships. Not too many people liked Mick, but no one thought he was capable of this. It was a tragic accident, everyone kept repeating.
There wasn't not looked after. You know, they was always happy, they never wanted for nothing.
As the smoke cleared and the grim reality set in, investigators began the painstaking process of determining the cause of the fire. It didn't take long for them to reach a chilling conclusion.
Police are saying this is a potential murder investigation.
Fire investigators quickly determined that the blaze had been started deliberately. Petrol had been poured throughout the letterbox and ignited, creating an inferno that rapidly spread up the stairs, trapping the sleeping children. The timing of the fire raised immediate suspicions. It occurred on the very morning that Mick Philpott was due to attend a custody hearing with his former mistress, Lisa Willis, who had left him 3 months earlier, taking her 5 children with her. As the investigation progressed, inconsistencies in the Philpott story began to emerge. Their behavior in the aftermath of the tragedy struck many as odd and inappropriate. Witnesses reported that Mick Philpott seemed to relish the media attention and displayed little genuine grief for his lost children. Mortuary manager revealed a particularly disturbing incident, stating that Philpott engaged in horseplay when he went to view his children's bodies. Even his friend, also called Mick Russell, was disgusted to see Philpott show zero emotion and joke around and call his children little while looking at their burned bodies. You would think mass murderers like Mick would try and hide their culpability, perhaps at least act devastated by their children's deaths, but Mick cared so little about the consequences of his actions that he did not even bother to mimic a basic level of humanity. His behavior was enough to have detectives name him a person of interest, and soon there was a breakthrough big enough to have him arrested too. The turning point came when forensic evidence linked the Philpotts to the crime. A discarded petrol container and glove were found near the house, and a few months later, forensic investigators also discovered traces of petrol on the clothes of Mick and Mairead Philpott, as well as their friend, Paul Mosley. To gather more evidence, police placed recording devices in the Philpotts' hotel room. The recorded conversations revealed incriminating statements.
What did you say about how many times you went up ladders?
I almost can't how many times I went up the ladders.
What did you cry when you were saying it? How bad?
Not really bad, but I did cry.
Yeah, this was Mick's priority days after his children burned alive. How he and Mairead came across to the police. These recordings, along with other evidence, such as an unused ladder found at the back of the house intended for the planned rescue, implicated Mick, Mairead, and Paul Mosley in the arson plot. As the investigation unfolded, the dark past of Mick Philpott came to light, revealing a long history of violence, manipulation, and control. Born in 1956, Philpott had gained notoriety long before the tragic fire. In 1978, at the age of 21, he was convicted of attempted murder after stabbing his 17-year-old girlfriend, Kim Hill, 15 times when she tried to end their relationship. Kim Hill later recalled the terrifying incident. "If I can't have you, no one else will," Philpott had told her menacingly. Shockingly, Philpott served just over 3 years of his 7-year sentence for this brutal attack. Kim's attempted murder was a horrifying act of violence that foreshadowed his later crimes.
Because of this combination, this makes him dangerous because he has no ability to really see somebody else's perspective.
This violence set a pattern for Philpott's relationships with all women. He consistently sought out young, vulnerable partners whom he could manipulate and control. In the years that followed, Philpott fathered at least 17 children with multiple women. He became a tabloid fixture in 2006 when he publicly demanded a larger council house to accommodate his unconventional living arrangement. He resided with his wife, Mairead, his mistress, Lisa Willis, and 11 children. Dubbed Shameless Mick by the media, Philpott seemed to revel in the notoriety. He appeared on various TV shows, including The Jeremy Kyle Show, where he defended his lifestyle, and unemployment. During one particularly heated exchange, Philpott told the host, "I'll criticize you as much as I want. This is a free country." Philpott enjoyed the attention, even if he was known nationwide as Shameless Mick. One of his friends later recalled,
"It was just all about Mick, wasn't it? If he wasn't the centre of attention, it wasn't really worth entertaining in his eyes."
Philpott's need for control extended to every aspect of his household. Both Mairead and Lisa worked, while Philpott remained unemployed, collecting their earnings and government benefits. A friend of the family noted he had control of all the money. The girls didn't get any money. If they wanted something, they'd have to ask.
He was a coward. He could only do it with women.
His domineering and abusive behavior was not limited to financial matters. Lisa Willis revealed in court that early in the relationship, during an argument, Philpott had beaten her with a piece of wood in front of her son. Mick Philpott's unconventional lifestyle and his demands for a larger council house made him a subject of intense media scrutiny. The tabloids dubbed him Britain's biggest scrounger after it was revealed that he was receiving £25,000 a year in benefits. Rather than shying away from the attention, Philpott seemed to thrive on it. He made multiple television appearances, including a notorious segment on ITV's Anne Widdecombe versus the Benefit Culture in 2007. During this appearance, Philpott's aggressive and controlling behavior was on full display. When challenged about his lifestyle, he became confrontational, telling Widdecombe,
"You useless, you are.
Yeah.
You're like the rest. Talk to that because you're not worth your attention."
The encounter nearly turned physical, with Widdecombe later saying,
I really thought he was going to hit me. You're a coward.
Let's do as a coward. Let's do that.
If he can do that on camera to someone he doesn't know well, it's possible that he's also very capable of doing that in a private space.
These public displays of aggression and entitlement should have raised red flags. However, despite the media attention and Philpott's known history of violence, Child Protection Services did not intervene. In 2003, Mick married a 19-year-old single mom called Mairead Duffy. Wedding days should be happy days, right? Well, even on Mick and Mairead's wedding day, Mairead's dad Jimmy had a bad feeling about it all.
He seemed to be mingling around everywhere and among the women, stuff like that there. And
Half the time she was sitting there on her own.
Jimmy only saw the tip of the iceberg that day. Mick was busy flirting with other women while his bride was watching them. But Mick would do much worse to May Reed. Like all his partners, Mick viewed her as a possession, one that he would quote-unquote share. When he was angry with her, he would hit her. And when he was bored with her, he would simply take another partner.
They always seemed to go for young girls. That was vulnerable. There was always 16, 17-year-olds.
Mick Philpott was not only psychopathic, but a textbook narcissist, as this expert claims.
He'd flatter them, they would be attracted to him because he gave them the attention, maybe attention they didn't have before in their life. And very quickly, he would get them on side, he'd move them in, and very soon he would start to control them.
He chose such young, submissive partners so that he could do this to multiple women at the same time, and neither one had the courage to call him out on it, until someone did. And this is what prompted Philpott to do the unthinkable. The catalyst for the tragic fire came in February 2012 when Mick's mistress, Lisa Willis, tired of the toxic situation, left 18 Victory Road with her 5 children.
I think she just had enough. She got older, she got wiser, and just had enough of controlling the situation.
This decision enraged Philpott, who was not only losing his mistress, but also the benefit payments associated with her children. This is what Mick's children were to him: benefit payment tools. A bitter custody battle ensued, with a court hearing scheduled for May 11th, the very day of the fire. In the months leading up to this date, Philpott's behavior became increasingly erratic and concerning. Neighbors reported that Mick had been telling people he had received threats to burn down his house. Now it's believed that Philpott was laying the groundwork for his plan, attempting to cast suspicion on Lisa Willis and her family. The prosecution would later argue that Philpott, along with May Reed and their friend Paul Mosley, hatched a plan to set fire to the house and frame Lisa Willis. The idea was that Philpott would heroically rescue the children, appearing as a victim and loving father in the upcoming custody hearing. Tragically, the plan went horribly wrong. The fire, fueled by the petrol poured throughout the letterbox, spread far more than anticipated. The children sleeping upstairs had no chance of escape.
And it wouldn't let me nowhere near it. Nowhere. Just a howling and come on closer and you're dead.
A tragedy that stunned Britain.
The children had been sleeping upstairs when fire spread through their council home.
The fire started on the ground floor, while all 6 children were asleep upstairs.
In the days following the fire, the Philpotts' behavior continued to raise suspicions. Despite the loss of their children, they were seen shopping, singing karaoke, and even engaging in intimate acts with Paul Mosley. The Philpotts' neighbors, who bravely tried to go into the fire and save the 6 children, were shocked at how relaxed the couple was, even as the house was still on fire.
If he would have touched me on my shoulder once, said, "My kids, please help me," I wouldn't be sat here today, brother.
The way he come out that garden when I came in, he didn't look like a guy that was coughing, like he was pretending to be.
On May 16th, 5 days after the fire, Mick and May Reed Philpott held a press conference that would prove to be a turning point in public perception. Observer Phil Brewster described the scene.
As Philpott enters the room, you can see already we've got some impression management going on. He's got a handkerchief half covering his face. We also see he's wearing dog tags because he's got some military service behind him. And this is a good way of creating an impression that, you know, I've served my country. This is where we get our first frontal view of the Philpott couple. The expression we're seeing on both the faces is not genuine sadness. He's brought his brows together. He looks like he's in pain or he's got constipation or something.
Crucially, Philpott never once mentioned his children by name or paid tribute to them during the conference. Instead, he thanked the community and asked for privacy. This performance struck many as insincere and inappropriate.
What he does do is almost deliver an Oscars acceptance speech because he thanks all and sundry.
I want to thank my 3 oldest children. Joe across the road, and the Butler brothers, and of course the poor firemen, the police, and the ambulances, the doctors, the nurses, literally everybody, and we can't express our gratitude to everybody.
Gratitude. Who the hell is going to feel gratitude at a time when you've just lost half of your family? It's very, very strange.
Mick was giving an award speech. He was grateful to all the people for the attention he was now getting. So much more attention than before with the tabloids. Now he was a national star, and he couldn't bother to show genuine sadness for his 6 children.
So he seems to be poking the eye here, and so the tissue is a prop to help him look sad, but it's not working. He's even checking his performance on his tissue. So he moves the tissue away from his face, and am I doing okay? Have I got some dampness? No, not yet. I might have to poke it even further.
Having lost 6 of their children, they still can't get a tear.
He never once mentioned those 6 children. He never once paid tribute to them, which is what you usually see at these kind of press conferences.
On May 28, 2012, Mick and Mick Philpott were arrested on suspicion of murder. They were formally charged 2 days later. On November 5th, Paul Mosley was also arrested after a forensic examination revealed petrol on his clothing. The trial began on February 11, 2013 at Nottingham Crown Court. As proceedings unfolded, the full extent of the Philpotts' dysfunctional and abusive household was laid bare. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was the 999 call made by May Reed on the night of the fire. Experts noted that she sounded unusually calm in the initial part of the call. Later, Mick could be heard repeatedly saying, "I can't get out," which prosecutors argued showed a man having a panic attack rather than desperately trying to save his children.
The fire service is away. I can't get out!
This is not a man who's desperate to get in to the house. This is a man having a panic attack who wants to get out of the situation.
The prosecution presented evidence that someone, likely Mick or Paul, had purchased petrol to deliberately start the fire. They indeed intended to make it look as though someone had poured petrol through the letterbox and lit it. Mick would then use a fire extinguisher to put it out, portraying himself as a hero just in time for the custody hearing. However, the plan went catastrophically wrong. The fire spread much faster than anticipated, fueled by the highly flammable varnish Philpott had recently applied to the staircase. This was also played in court.
I'm proud of you. But you didn't want to do it.
This wasn't Mick telling May Reed he was proud of her for setting the children on fire. No, he was proud of her for giving Paul Mosley oral sex in exchange for his silence.
Mosley is clearly worried about how his role is going to possibly be revealed to the police at some point, and he's itchy, he's getting anxious. And so, in order to placate him, Philpott suggests that Mairead will give him oral sex, and he's using her as some form of currency. And he says to her afterwards, "Well, I know that you didn't want to do that." Well, bloody hell, if you knew that she didn't want to do that, why the hell would you ask her to?
You guys, I have no words for this person. On April 2nd, 2013, the jury found all 3 defendants guilty of manslaughter. Manslaughter means that the prosecution did not need to prove these 3 planned to unalive the children, rather that they did so, whether intentionally or not. The judge, describing Philpott as a disturbingly dangerous man with no moral compass, sentenced him to life in prison, with a minimum term of 15 years. Mick Philpott and Paul Mosley each received 17-year sentences. For their devastated neighbors, this was extremely lenient.
There's no justification in that at all. Divide it into 6. You can't do it.
17 years. Half of that, you know, it's only a couple of years a kid, that's not right, man. You know. But then she's got to get out living with this on her conscience. But has she got any conscience, you know? Who knows? But they've been sentenced, justice has been paid. But for me, it wasn't long enough, nowhere near long enough.
Even May Reed's own dad, Jimmy, agreed that they should have gotten that sentence times 6.
6 child, they got 1 sentence for the whole 6 children. A lot of us thought they should have got a sentence for each child, kind of thing, you know.
In one last disgusting act, Mick showed Jimmy the finger on his way out of the courtroom. This is the man he is, a narcissistic, psychopathic monster who can only accept having the last word in every argument. To the shock and dismay of many, Mick Philpott was released early from prison in 2020. At the end of 2023, this case once again made headlines after Paul Mosley was also released on parole. All those who loved the 6 children were left wondering just how many times will the system fail them. Indeed, many people feel like the Philpott children were failed by their parents, as well as the Child Protection Services, who should have been more eagle-eyed, especially when it comes to convict, tabloid, psycho dads. Despite numerous red flags throughout Mick Philpott's life, the system failed to intervene and protect these vulnerable children. Even when he was tabloid fodder, and neighbors and citizens worried out loud about the 11 children under his roof, CPS didn't seem to care. The deaths were not just a tragedy, they were a failure of society to protect its most vulnerable members. The warning signs were there in Mick Philpott's violent past, his controlling behavior, in the unstable home environment he created. Yet these children slipped through the cracks of a system that should have protected them. As we remember these 6 young lives cut tragically short, we must also commit to doing better. We need child protection services that are well-funded, well-trained, and empowered to act decisively when children are at risk. We need a society that is vigilant and willing to speak up when they suspect a child is in danger. And we need a system that puts the welfare of children above all else. The case of Mick Philpott is an extreme one, but it serves as a powerful reminder of what can happen when we fail to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Let the memory of Jade, John, Jack, Jesse, Jaden, and Dwayne be a call to action. Let us honor these children by ensuring that their tragic loss leads to meaningful change, so that no other child suffers a similar fate. The responsibility lies with all of us, parents, neighbors, teachers, social workers, and society as a whole, to be the protectors that every child deserves. Hey, thanks for watching. What are your thoughts on this case? What can we do to make sure no other Mick Philpott has custody of their children? Leave a thoughtful comment down below, and before you leave, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. All right, catch you soon. Stay safe.